Hi everyone, I'm Tom from FX Digital. I'm one of the co-founders at the company, and we design and build connected TV applications. And today I'm going to have a lovely chat with Grace.
Hello, I am Grace. I work for Channel 4. I don't have a sizzle reel like the Netflix guys, so I'm going to get one for next time. We don't entertain the world. We do create change through entertainment. And we are interesting because we have no profit motive at all. We are fully advertiser funded, but fully cost neutral. And that creates some interesting dynamics, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And we just wanted to spend some time lifting the lid of why have some of the things that feel obvious to this room not got done. So we talked about collaboration earlier. We talked about partnership. We talked about consolidation, which are really good on PowerPoint. And some of the lifting the lid on actually how some of my day goes might help everyone else to understand why these things are complicated, and then with a view to what we do about them in the future.
Brilliant. Before we dive into all of that, I thought we're a nice little icebreaker question. What is your favourite show on Channel 4?
You know what? For two reasons. It's our biggest show. It makes us the most money, and it's just amazing. It's called Married at First Sight. It's brilliant. In fact, go into the UK version, which is starting next month for those in the UK or with their VPN. And then you can build up to Married at First Sight Australia, because the Australians really know how it's done.
See, I went straight in with the Australian one, so I went straight in.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah. I highly recommend it, by the way. Great. So, yeah, this session's entitled A Day in the Life of... it'd be great just to give a bit of background around where you focus your time at Channel 4, considering your role is across technology and distribution.
Yeah, that's right. So I run our partnerships team, our distribution team, our information security team, our broadcast team, and our streaming team. And I won't tell you how many people that work for me, but trust me, when our friends said, I have 200 people in my partnerships team, it's not very many. I went, oof, I quite like that. Yeah, I have kind of big plural job. And in some ways, that's really, really exciting. And really what my job is to say, what are the strategic priorities of our company? And how can our distribution technology estate support those strategic priorities? When I first arrived at Channel 4, we were literally in the basement. It was one of those departments. There's also a program called the IT Crowd, where they're in the basement and they put a sort of young woman in charge. And I was like, oh my God, it's a documentary. And I was like, well, this won't do at all. Long are the days of service industries, and longer the days of we do what we are told. What the technology and partnerships team need to be at the table, at the strategic table, and driving the business, because our competitors are doing that so well. And if we're going to be a transformed legacy business, that's what we need to do as well. So I spent the past 3 or so years hanging out with almost everyone that doesn't work in technology. So I hired some wonderful people that understand broadcast infrastructure and IP infrastructure, and some wonderful partners to build our streaming platform. And my job really is to enable them to do their jobs by getting everyone else out of the way. So understanding, this is the solution we need for these reasons. Give me problems, don't give me answers. And at an executive and a budget level, all those conversations, I'm going to get you what you need. I don't always succeed, but that I feel is very much what I do in the day.
That's a lot. And considering that kind of, I guess, multifaceted role that you have there, how do you balance your time and the priorities at Channel 4?
With difficulty, so all advice welcome. But I tend to try and have three of kind of portfolio of things. So you have the operations and you have the information security. And if that stuff goes wrong, it really hurts you. So you've got to keep that going at a base level. And then I try and have 2 or 3 strategic projects that flight at different times. There are different parts of the ecosystem. You don't want to be running 2 RFPs at once. So let's make sure that those are flighted and that you have enough planning in your year, or in your 2 years, or in your 3 years, in order to actually move forward in the goal and have the balance of the important and the urgent. I spend a lot of time, as I say, with other people, and not enough time with people in this room, physically, actually, and metaphorically. One of the hardest things is to carve out that time to do the bigger strategic thinking, kind of question yourself, have people ask you questions. So I'm delighted to be here today.
Fantastic. And you mentioned this at the start when we came up here, that Channel 4 is self-funded through advertisement. It's quite a unique position for a public service broadcaster to be in. How does that impact leadership, day-to-day decision-making, even from ways of working?
It's a massive blessing and a massive curse. So it's a blessing because we're not answerable to anyone, right? We're not answerable to a shareholder. We're not answerable to a founder. We're not answerable to any kind of corporate infrastructure. And that's lovely because we get to, in theory, just do the right thing for our audiences. I say in theory, because actually a profit motive can be quite helpful sometimes in terms of focusing, making choices and making clear decisions. So our challenge in that is when you can do anything that's good for the world or anything that's going to create change for entertainment, sometimes you have too much choice and too many roads to go down. But we find a way through.
I imagine there's some companies out here that would love to not have a founder.
Yeah, it's nice.
Not ours. And when it comes to building out the Channel 4 product, obviously you're across so many platforms, everything from set-top boxes on Freeview and UView and the high-end devices. You're on Vision OS. How do you structure a team? And how do you go about building such a product that's got such big reach across devices?
Yeah, so we're the third biggest UK streaming service. Netflix and Amazon and Disney. They're there, but UK owned. So we are big. I also should say Channel 4 was created as an industrial intervention. So we don't actually make any programs of ourselves. We buy them all, and that buy don't build culture really infiltrates everything we do all the way down to the technology estate. So the very simple answer to your question, Tom, is I don't build anything. I look for people in this room to do it for me. But what's really interesting is that even within that, we have found the fragmentation of all those platforms and operating systems you just talked about, and the updates, and the endless delays of Amazon Kepler, Amazon here, I know. There's endless conversations. They're really, really hard. And they're really, really hard because although we are big in the UK market, we are teeny tiny in a global market, and we are working when it comes to distribution and access to audiences in a global market. And that has required us to reframe how we think about technology. So we need to really think, what is our streaming product there to do? Our streaming product there is to get our content to audiences as quickly and as securely as you can, to recommend them, to have the data, to have the return path. But it doesn't need to be different. It doesn't need to differentiate. We differentiate through content, we differentiate through brand. We don't necessarily need to differentiate through the streaming service itself. When you don't have to differentiate in this streaming service, that screams platform partnership to us. It screams like, can you then buddy up in order to make these complicated, difficult technology integrations easier? And when we ran a big RFP, and this is when we met over the past 18 months to do exactly that, to say, how can we take our streaming platform from a fully IP-owned, built proposition, Accenture built it for us, but it was ours, to being a much more platform-driven proposition, with the idea that you can defray those costs of Amazon Kepler and the others over a wider estate, work together. We should all be able to work faster and work more agile. So that's really interesting. But that was a difficult decision, guys. Like all those conversations I had with the finance and strategy team, it was about that. Because the people saying, this is our strategic future, Grace. Do you really want to give it up? Do you really want to not deliver it? To which you say, well, we don't own our own broadcast playout, do we? Right? There's this precedent for this. We are just at that. I believe we're at that phase of the precedent where you have to have scale in order to compete.
And how do you manage the delivery across the additional platforms and rolling that out versus day-to-day improvements and updates to the product as well?
I do too much of the first and not enough of the second. And that's why we need to change, right? That's why we need to have a much more simple way of working with these different operating systems, unless they'd like to consolidate, in which case, hooray. But in the market that we have to have a much more simple approach to that. I also think we are much more mindful than perhaps we were 4 or 5 years ago about the front-end product improvements we do want to do, right? So actually, how are you really audience-driven in terms of those front-end product improvements? and what are the balance of the things that are out the UX and the design and the overall end-to-end experience versus data improvements versus metadata improvements versus efficiencies, right? We think in a much more ROI-driven way than perhaps we did. I say this because I was once involved in turning the BBC Sport website yellow because one of the bosses fancied doing it, and I've never had a worse 2 weeks in my life because everyone hated it. So less of that kind of change and more kind of ROI-driven change on the front end, and we're sort of in the slipstream of the back end.
And not specifically just front end product updates, but I guess R&D is playing a crucial role in this as well to help innovate the products or the experience for the end user. How do you at Channel 4 balance that time to invest in research and development, keep pushing for innovation whilst building out day-to-day product improvements and more platforms?
I'm going to ask audience participation here. Who thinks they do enough time on R&D and innovation in their day-to-day lives? Yeah, thought so. It's really, really, really hard. It's really, really hard. You have to pick your bets. You have to pick the ones you care about. You have to pick the ones where you can really, really add value. So we're part of the IBC Accelerators program, which is a really, really great initiative and is a really way of getting young talent and collaborating across the industry. So hooray for that, and we'll continue to sponsor that. We then just look for opportunities where it's sort of the only things only Channel 4 would do, and hope that you guys will step into your niches as well, and by that we'll fill and innovate. So an example of that is we've just sponsored a Black British Founders program for Black British technology founders, which is niche that's not as full as we'd like for reasons I'm sure you can guess, but that's something the Channel 4 brand can really add something to. So we look for those opportunities, we partner, and we wish we could do more. How about you?
We actually use a graduate program as well. So we work with universities, people that are studying computer science and programming and interested in getting a foot in the industry. We have teams that can submit ideas as well to the company about initiatives they want to run. And that creates like a backlog of projects that get reviewed by the senior leadership team. And then the ones that are kind of chosen, the graduates can work on. So it helps keep driving innovation whilst also making sure we're keeping the lights on.
Have any of them hit production?
Well, actually...
Put you on the spot here.
No, one of them's turned into a huge part of our offering, which is automation testing. So Martin, who runs our QE department now, he had an idea that wanted to do automation testing on connected TV. It's a big challenge in the industry. We built that out to help improve the life of our QAs and make sure we get that detailed coverage of quality across TVs. And it's actually turned into a service now as well. So that's all come out of his own idea and initiative. Don't get me wrong, we've done many other initiatives that haven't got to that point. And like you said, you've got to place your bets.
Well, that's also mega in solving a real-life problem, in the fragmentation of this world. Very good. Well done, him.
Yeah, I'll pass on the feedback. So, technology is in constant flux at the moment. We have to mention AI. If we didn't, then, what we did. I'm just keen to understand, how Channel 4 are approaching these massive changes in technology and how AI might impact ways of working. Are you seeing any impact on the delivery of technical projects?
Yes, a little bit. I always say, very simply, AI is useful to me if it saves me money or makes me money. And we are seeing around the edges things that are beginning to save us money in places like code review, assurance, and just in the enterprise day-to-day lives that, most of our jobs is email, right? So all that stuff as well. Or Slack, or to pick your battle. But we are in a kind of interesting part of the hype cycle in AI, aren't we? And I would be really interested to hear from anyone in this room if anyone's cracked it, because then I can steal your ideas, which is the best route to innovation, actually. Because it's all brilliant, but just really hard to implement and really hard to get those use cases through. And I'm being really honest, where we've had the best success is where it's been an add-on to an existing part of our workflow. So Adobe Firefly is really, really good. It's really expensive, but it's really, really good. But we already had the Adobe estate. The Microsoft estate is really good. We have some really key partners called Prime Focus Technologies who are working a lot with AI in terms of the MAM and the searchability of our archive and those sorts of things. So those sorts of experiments, I think, will go somewhere. It gets really, really hard when you're trying to kind of shoehorn an AI thing into an existing workflow and you haven't thought around about the end-to-end consumer journey or colleague journey in order to get to the outcomes that you're being sold. And I suppose that's been what's just been disappointing over the pilots that you've run and gone, oh, this isn't going to work because managing this change is hard. And I'm an AI optimist. I really do think it's going to make our lives much, much more practical and make us be able to do much more of the stuff that's going to move the dial for our businesses and make our working lives better. But I'm being super honest, we have not found that magic bullet yet. But if everyone has, please come and find me afterwards. Have you found it? I'll buy it from you.
I would say there's some bold claims with AI, especially with a team of engineers. To hear that AI is replacing some of the work is quite threatening, and so we have to have a really careful way of introducing AI into the business. It comes down from the leadership team and how we communicate it around the company. We're not doing anything fancy. We're taking our time with it. I think initially what we're doing is training AI on our documentation so that junior engineers and midway engineers, they can use that to retrieve step-by-step guides on some of the coding practices or how we build out some of the features for the applications. I think we'll get to a point where we can start using AI agents to contribute to dev tickets, but smaller tasks, but not in isolation. It's peer-reviewed with humans involved as well. But it will help take on some of the kind of smaller tasks and the devs can focus on the kind of bigger complexities. And it's actually quite similar to how automation works. It's not replaced the QA manual testing job. It's helped enhance it so they can focus on more kind of specifics they want to test. But yeah, we're still getting there. All right, so one thing I'm really interested to actually ask about, and especially after just seeing that YouTube Kaizen documentary that just looked like a Marvel trailer. That was amazing. I really want to watch that. And I know Channel 4 has a big YouTube strategy as well. And I'm just fascinated to understand how you see that in collaboration with all the other distribution channels. How does that work? Is it cannibalizing? Is it a value add? Do you see different audiences focusing on different channels?
Yes, I'm going to trail my talk tomorrow with Pedro from YouTube, so I'll be more honest with you guys because I have to be nice to him. YouTube, so we very led from a broadcast perspective in the UK in our YouTube partnership. What do I mean by that? We were the first and the biggest publisher of full-length TV programs, as you and I would know it, onto YouTube. So we also have a digital-first kind of content creation channel called Channel 4 4.0, where we try and find people like those that we talked about earlier and to create more Channel 4 type content. It's quite low budget, but it does all right. So we have that. But the major viewing for Channel 4 now comes from TV programs that we put on. And that has been a really culturally challenging thing for Channel 4 because I work with lots of people who like to curate a schedule and they still think about overnights and they really worry about like the launch of their channel. And we have talent who go, oh, I don't want to be in with those YouTubers. I want to be kind of in that totem pole 9 p.m. schedule or 10 p.m. schedule, and I want the press to review me. And the cultural shift for saying, actually, YouTube is just another mechanism of watching TV is really challenging. I'm having to run quite a clear tightrope. We do our own ad sales around YouTube, so we have partner sales strategy. So we do get all right CPMs from it, but we make less money per view from YouTube than TV. So it's people that want to keep it on TV are rational. They're not being Luddites. They're making a rational business decision. However, you and I know the audiences to the Everest documentary probably aren't watching a lot of TV, right? What they're doing is consuming a lot of social media and consuming a lot of YouTube. So if we want to remain relevant to that audience, which we have to because we're here to create change for entertainment, particularly for those younger groups, we need to sort of fish where the fish are and find a way of riding both horses. The good news is, as you say, we are seeing, and as we saw earlier, very little cannibalization. So as far as we're aware, people who watch YouTube, and people will come to C4 streaming, watch C4 streaming, and we don't have a lot of overlap between the two. But we are not putting exactly the same content proposition on both platforms. So maths, tune in, it's great, Married at First Sight. That's only on our streaming platform. That's our real tentpole program. The Great British Bake Off, I think it's called the British Cooking Show elsewhere, right? That is a Channel 4 show. That is just on our streaming platform. Those are the things we go, you're going to come to us for that. YouTube, we just put older content on, slightly maybe a week or 30 days after it's been published on our streaming platform. And we are finding some really weird dynamics, right? So what was our biggest performing show last week on YouTube was UK versus USA School Swap. It's an old reality format, right? Years old, somehow got found and picked up the algorithm. Some then started to create a flywheel and created a load of incremental value and incremental audience to a show that actually tells you a really interesting story about values in the UK and the US, right? It's actually a really interesting show. So we were delighted about that. So we go, right, that's getting value out of the archive. But it is a tightrope, and we are learning. And we're also learning that the TV schedule in the form that we know and we consumed it because we're old doesn't work on YouTube. What works on YouTube is real passion niches and real places where you can create that fandom, and that's what we heard earlier. And so reality fandoms, true crime fandoms, property fandoms, those are the things that work really, really well, and the algorithm likes it. I'll talk about the algorithm another day because otherwise we'll be here all day.
That's fantastic to hear that you can leverage YouTube as well to elevate, archive content as well. Sometimes I think a lot of streamers have a difficulty sort of bringing that to the surface and with that discovery piece. I actually remember once I was doing a bit of a Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmare rabbit hole, and I was just binging that on YouTube, and I don't even know how that happened, but it did.
I don't know how. That's a Channel 4 show. I don't know how that happened either.
And yeah, my last question here is more around the fast forward strategy that Channel 4 has been quite public about. So in that strategy, it should genuinely be a digital first public service streamer by 2030. What does that look like in practice for you, and what you're doing today to make sure you're ready for that?
It's about managing that glide path. So I think already for our under 25 audience, they're watching more of our streaming product than they are our digital product. I think last time I looked at us versus Europe, the UK is quite a bit further ahead on streaming first versus linear first, driven a lot by the BBC, who are great friends of us and we like a lot. But it means about saying, how do we shift our viewers to streaming first, because that's where the future is, and then how do we shift our advertisers as well? And that's the challenge, because we need to shift the trading model. Again, if you want to know about trading models, come and find me afterwards. But that, for me, is what happens. And every decision we make is in that service of that goal. So I'm going through a budget process at the moment. I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm going, how do I take money out of the legacy businesses, and what are the painful decisions I need to make there? Always painful. In order to fund a digital first future. And that's cultural shift is happening across the departments, and collectively I think that means we will make the change. Not to say it's easy, and there are arguments, but that's definitely what we are gunning towards, because we know we're talking about, when do you turn off the broadcast part, put masts on hills, right, and go fully IP. This future is coming towards us quickly, and we know that technology takes a while to catch up, so we need to start thinking about that now.
Grace, thanks for sharing. That's been really insightful.
You're welcome. You're totally welcome.
Have we got time for questions at all?
We do.
Okay, brilliant. Also, you might have noticed 4 lovely water bottles over there. If you ask a question, you get a water bottle. I have a 5th in my rucksack if we get to a 5th.
Bribery, I love it.
There we go.
So I get to ask. I asked a question earlier. Could I have one?
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah. Any questions?
Hello, and this isn't just for the water bottle, but it's a very, very good water bottle. And I'm told it takes other things other than water too, so go figure. Thanks, Grace. Thanks, Tom. That was a really interesting chat. By the way, IT Crowd is smashing, but I think Great British Bake Off is probably better, and probably the earlier series, which were maybe on a different platform. Anywho,
You're from the BBC, aren't you?
Oh, right. I wanted to ask, so it was really interesting where you were talking about partnering with various companies to get onto those platforms, and, such different platforms across the way. Say Kepler again a few times if you want. And I wanted to understand, how does that fare along with your strategy and working with other public service broadcasters and, joint ventures? Are you feeling, is one of them pulling back, or is it accelerating each other? And how does that fare with your overall plan for this fast forward strategy?
Okay, so I'm going to do 101 on PSB ecosystem. There are 4 of us. There's the BBC, the biggest, ITV, our biggest commercial network, Channel 4 and Channel 5. We have various joint ventures, which are really good. So Freely, if anyone has not heard of it, go and look it up, is a kind of sense of an IP first, but public service TV platform. So we love our joint ventures, and we do love our friends at the BBC. And you know what? I think in terms of that kind of consolidation that our metadata friends earlier were talking about, I think finding people within your market or without your market with common interests you can work together with in order to defray these costs really will have to be the future. And just to be super frank, our regulators and our government are telling us, if you want to be a public service broadcaster, please can you work together in order to compete with the global operators and maybe make this stuff less expensive so you can put more money elsewhere or decrease costs for audiences. So I think it's a real challenge. And I think the other word that was used earlier is ego. And often, if we can get some egos out the way and people who think their own pensions aren't at risk, we might make more progress. But I am one of those. So as long as I'm in charge of it, that's fine.
So in the States, we have a trouble with the CPMs being so much lower on digital. It's kind of embarrassing. Do you think, and you can track and you can know that who the person is, et cetera. In the UK, is that the same? And do you feel like if a younger generation is watching, do you think that younger generation goes into advertising agencies and says, no, I want to pay a higher CPM in digital because I think it's more valuable than TV? Do you see that changing anytime soon?
So again, my sales director's going to kill me. I think we are complicit in that dynamic to a degree in the UK. So the way we sell TV is so opaque that we say, no, if you want to reach a mass audience to launch your new FMCG good or to launch your new kind of web offer, we had a lot of increase in the pandemic when kind of online only shopping came. TV is the only place to do it because it's the only way to create a mass audience. So even though our average audiences have decreased a lot over the past 5 to 6 years, a lot, actually our CPMs have held up, right? Because of that market dynamics. We're going to the market and say, this is the only place you can get mass audiences. And that's lovely. But I believe that's we're at a tipping point where the advertisers start to say, hang on a second, this doesn't feel accountable and it feels like less value than I used to. And that is when I think that we'll bridge that CPM gap from digital to non-digital. But I don't want to go lawless commodinator. And I think if we end up in a YouTube scenario where we're all dealing with YouTube CPMs, our businesses in their current form are not sustainable. So we're going to have to work out a way of selling a premium digital audience in a way that we currently serve a premium television audience, bundled up, that isn't just bottom of the funnel. Really good, by the way, important part, but that top of the funnel marketing system, I don't think has been worked out. And I think that's a head scratcher for my sales director.